I am Christine Lashley. I create painterly realism and oils. And in my spare time, I like to do gardening.
Hello, I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Art, the podcast where we get to know women from the world of visual arts. This is Season 2, Episode 2. My guest this week is Christine Lashley, an American landscape oil painter who says the beauty of a moment held in memory and fusing reality and the abstract are key elements of her style. Christine was born in San Francisco in 1967, but moved when she was still a baby. Her father Charles worked for the US government, which involved being frequently relocated. Her mother Marta was a stay-at-home mum who, aside from raising Christina and her sister Rebecca, was a doll maker. Because of the transient lifestyle of her family, Christine attended 4 different high schools. When her mother spotted her natural talent, she was encouraged to pursue art. At the age of 17, Christine studied at the Sorbonne and Parsons in Paris. It was there that she was spotted for a different talent and offered work as a fashion model, which led to international travel and living the high life for a while. But after 2 years, Christine decided she wanted to go back to school, so she returned to the US and gained a BFA from Washington University in St. Louis. Her first job was in graphic design and creating murals for set design in theatre and ballet. She met her husband in college, and the couple moved to Seattle before moving east to Boston and then to the Washington, D.C. area. Christine currently lives in Reston, Virginia, and has 2 daughters who are both artistic. Christine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Are you a podcast listener generally?
I've started listening to some podcasts. I've heard several of yours, which were really interesting. Audio is not my thing. I'm so into visual. I guess maybe I am always binging on visual stimulus, and maybe it's good to moderate that with audio sometime.
What do you listen to when you're painting?
Music, or these days silence. I'm trying to just really enjoy the silence, and I'll bring in music these days. It used to be music all the time, and now that I have my new studio, I really enjoy looking outside and kind of listening to the sounds of the woods. And it's pretty well insulated as well. So I've been enjoying silence. Otherwise, for music, it just varies widely. Could be jazz, could be classical. I was doing some French paintings and I listened to some French pop music, and that's pretty fun. Spotify will suggest things. Sometimes it gets it really wrong. Other times it's like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool. So,
do you need something to get in the mood to set the mood, depending on what you're doing? If it's indoors, particularly.
Yeah, that will work. And since I don't know if I'm audio allergic, but I don't like sound can be very disruptive. So music would help me channel myself. It sounds counterintuitive. Like, if I like silence, why would I use music that way? So I'm not really sure what's going on, but I've found that, like, for example, at the quick draw, when I have to focus, I will listen to either an album without mixing it, or my playlist without mixing it. So I know the cadence of the flow of the music, and it actually helps me keep time. Or I'll listen to a song over and over again. So I guess that's really strange, but yeah, I'm working on my relationship with audio, but it can help me get in the groove, as you say.
What else helps you get in the groove? You know, when you leave your kitchen or your daily chores and you go into the studio.
Yeah, that's a good question, because a lot of people talk about being in the groove or being in the flow and tapping the creative flow, maintaining focus. And it's a really big deal. these days, I just do it. I feel the avoidance behavior sometimes, like, oh, I need to return that phone call, or, oh, I should just load the dishwasher because my studio's adjacent to my house. But I let myself kind of spin off on those things, and then it's like kind of jumping into the deep end of the pool when it's cold water, and it's like, boom, doing it. And then I'm just happy and swimming. And whether the painting is not happening well and I'm a little bit struggling with it, it's still the enjoyable flow of making that concentrated effort and experiencing the pull of the paint. Even if I have to stop and get a drink of water, or find perhaps different reference, or step back and take a look at it, I still feel like I'm in that flow. And I think I feel lucky, because I know there's times when artists talk about hitting a wall. So, knock on wood, I can keep getting there, as it were. Could be that my studio surroundings are such that they are catapulting me forward. I have a new studio. It's very inspirational to be in there, and the space and the light is exciting, and therefore I want to be in there. That was not always the case. I had a very small studio previous to that. I've tried to also build my studio when in the conceptual stage, and the follow through with making sure it was on track to be like the plein-air or outdoor experience, where you have time of day that affects your work either majorly or microscopically, in the fact that the light is changing. And even if it's a gray day, the light doesn't stay all that constant. So with my studio being kind of aware of my surroundings, I think it's been helping me, especially during the day. It's a little harder at night, but during the day, I don't struggle with the lighting as much, and it's just boom, I'm painting, and it's enjoyable. Everything's great if the painting is coming along, but like I mentioned before, there's times when you're destroying the painting because it's not working, or kind of painting sideways to work on this area. But yeah, I'm talking a lot about the logistics of painting, but pretty much that's everything. When you're being a creative, you have to be able to get to that point. And there's been times in my life when I haven't been able to so easily reach that. And therefore I'm just very appreciative that that flow is happening for me now. It's a good time.
Do you find then you now have those emotional tools, if you will, to push through the wall if it pops up?
Yes, it's show up to work. And another trick that I've done over time is, if I feel, instead of laundry or returning phone calls or doing or shopping or doing something that's not pertaining to art, I allow myself to do the business side of, let's say, maintaining my website, returning emails. Social media these days takes up a fair amount of time. And therefore, I'll usually do that in the morning when I'm a little slower. And I try to schedule house appointments if something needs to be fixed, or I need to run an errand. I'll try to do that in the morning. And then I know in the noon hours towards evening is hopefully when I'll be my most productive. But I try not to stress about it if it's not happening fully. I just say, oh, well, it's time for chores. And then, don't really like those chores. So painting becomes very happy and seductive at that point. Yeah, let's get painting. Enough of the chores.
Now, I know how much you love painting outdoors. That is your thing, preferred environment, I think. But what about after dark indoors?
Yeah, after dark indoors. That's a difficult situation for me. I love, let's just also clarify, I love painting nocturnes. And instead of painting those outside, I'll usually do that when I'm painting outside, like for a plein-air or the outdoor painting competitions that I do. I will do those either at twilight or in the dawn hours. So there's something about daylight that's special. I will paint at night in my studio. It's just harder to do. I just don't feel as inspired, but I can't exactly clarify why. Maybe I've been, at least lately, working so intently during most of the waking hours that by the time evening rolls around, it's another visual clue. Like, guess what? You've been up for 10, 12 hours and you've been working at your easel. Maybe it's time to take a break. So it could just be that.
Does it make a difference if you're working on a commission? Do you feel differently when you're working under the pressure of a commission, or is that just another painting for you?
Yeah, that's another interesting question, because commissions for me have changed over the years. Commissions used to be, for a while I did watercolor portraits of children, and I really enjoyed that role that I did. I also did some adults, but I especially liked working with children because I had children of my own, and all of a sudden young people were really fascinating, and the soft skin and their expressions. I had a pet bird that would fly on their heads, and he was, or not if they didn't want that. But most kids were like, wow, that's so cool. A little parakeet. I'd call him over, and I got these great expressions and taking photos and just talking to the kids that came over and visited. And that was fun to do commissions like that. It was more immersive. And nowadays I don't do portrait commissions anymore because I found that over time my eyesight has changed, and I don't focus on the arm's length as well. It's almost like I want to take my glasses off and work on something close up, or be able to stand a lot further back from it. And in addition to that, I am mostly working in oil now. Watercolor was kind of my first career. So commissions have now morphed into, can I collaborate with the client and what would they like? And sometimes it's taking an image that really caught their eye. Perhaps the painting sold. Would I do it a different size? Commissions are not, here's my house, would you paint that? However, if it's a really cool house, yes, I would paint that. If somebody told me about a property they owned in Telluride, and they said, I really love this painting that you painted of the mountain and the city, and would you include a little rooftop of a property that we own? And I was like, yeah, I could do that. That was cool. I was talking to somebody who loved the town and saw something in my painting that, it wasn't a house portrait. It was, wow, we love the town, but we want you to just feature the roof that represents our property. And I thought, well, that's fun. So it depends. Commissions have become a different thing now. It's fun to collaborate with clients. It's another way of, I create visual things that have to impart my personal excitement to the viewer. So a commission is a way for the client to say, hey, I'm excited about this visually, and I saw one of your pieces that made me feel X, Y, and Z. And then we enter into a dialogue where we decide, do we want to create this thing together? And happily, the answer is yes, sometimes, but, ironically, seems like the bigger the painting is, the easier it is to do the commission. And so I've started opting not to do smaller commissions unless I just feel like doing the painting and the client has the option to purchase it or not. So usually the big ones, I'll have a deposit with that, and the client and I enter into this good arrangement of here's the visual, here's the concept, here's your main reference photo. Off we go. No sketch, because I don't want to work with the sketch approval. I need to, it's interesting when you ask about commissions, because I guess most people think of it like, oh, I want this painted. Can you do that? And then there's money involved. But commissions for me now are, can I borrow some of your excitement, client? And if the answer is yes, I can immediately get a sense of, oh, hey, that's cool. And it's also, I still do commissions because it's a way of working with constraints. It's almost like a school assignment, which back in the days when I went to art school, I would hate that because I'm like, ugh, somebody is telling me what to paint. I just want to paint something for myself. Well, over time, I realized that, as I was mentioning before, my job is visually to communicate with other people. And sure, I want to make art for myself and I hope people get it. But what could I do if somebody gives me constraints? Like sometimes those are, even in school days, if I got over my preconceived notions, that could lead to, that's why you have those assignments. It could lead to my best work yet. And I would finish the project and be like, well, hey, that wasn't that bad. And look, I think, gee whiz, I actually learned something here. And so I do feel like I learned from commissions. I just recently did a commission of a beach painting for a client. And, the other thing is that I tell clients I can't tell you when it's going to be done, because some take a year and some I'll finish in like 2 or 3 weeks. It just is very random as to how my inspiration goes. And once I articulate that, clients are like, okay, all right. Because of course they want me to be inspired to create their painting. But anyway, back to this beach painting that I did. The client just had, I guess she had followed me on Instagram and was in one of my classes, and thought I'd really like for you to do this painting, and here's my space, and this is what I was kind of thinking about. So again, this is important to her, and she's presenting these, it's like she's presenting a visual collection of things, and she's saying, hey, this is something I'm interested in. What's your take on it? And immediately I latched on to my experience at the beach, and I got just really excited. And I finished the commission really quickly, and she's already given her approval and is super excited to see it. And I had such a good time working on it that it was like I didn't have to find the subject matter. She presented it, and the subject matter like just kind of hit me over the head. So I got so excited working on it that I did another one. And of course it's different, but all of a sudden I got extra excited because I'm like, wow, that's the whole point of being at the beach, is that we know what we're going to see when we go over the hill. It's going to be the soft dunes, and this is the beach path, and probably it's a blue sunny day, or, we already kind of know what the weather is going to be. When you go to the beach, you check the weather. But imagine appreciating the nuances of, okay, you have a week at the beach and it's great weather or pretty great weather every single day. Now, you know your parameters, that's what's going to happen. If you're paying attention, what would the nuances of each day be? One day the sky is going to be warmer. One day the ocean is going to be a little bit more busy. Perhaps there was extra high tide last night, and what type of shells washed up on the shore. So then you get into this groove of appreciating the beauty of the beach, like almost on a deeper level, because it's that full experience of being there at the beach. And in connection with unbeknownst to this client, I had spent a week at the ocean or I don't know, maybe actually that's why she contacted me, but I had done an event that was called plein-air, and that was an outdoor painting competition that was a week long, done up north of, the area is north of Boston. And I spent a full week, and that's what happened. I manically checked the weather morning, noon, and night to make sure I was going to stay on track. And within those constraints of, yeah, I'm probably painting water every day. And yeah, I'm probably going to paint the water on the ocean because that is exciting to me. Then given those constraints, what ended up happening for my paintings that week? And I just got super excited with what I did with that. And I guess commissions are also a way of, when I go and do an outdoor painting competition, and I do about, I'd say anywhere from 4 to 7. I try to not do too many, but my point is, in a way, that's like a commission, because you have an organizing group that says, we're either inviting you or you have been juried in to create work for the week. What are you going to create for us? Here's our scenery, paint outdoors, don't work from photos, and off you go. And you're left to your own creativity to make a body of work. And it's lots of fun. So there's my story about commissions. I came full circle to all types of things.
Well, you did lead nicely into that second point you made about painting for competitions, because I was going to ask you if you relish that kind of pressure too.
I do. It's maybe, I never thought of myself as an outgoing person or putting on a performance or anything like that. I thought, especially at certain points in my life when I was younger, that would just be the worst ever. Why would you want to draw attention to yourself like that and take a risk? But art is taking a risk. And every time that goes back to getting in the groove or staying in the flow, you're facing the blank canvas, or you're facing a painting that needs to be partially repainted, or there's expectations to, now's the moment, now's the time to create. And all of that, whether it's a demo, a competition, a commission, time alone in the studio with absolutely nobody watching, and but maybe you don't, maybe you're just painting for fun. But you still have that point of, it's time to create now. Can you show up and do the job? And, that's what competitions and plein-air events do for me, is they kind of give me a kick in the rear. It's a big kind of knock on the head that says, stop overthinking it and drop your gear and get painting, because boom, the clock is ticking. Your artistic body of work starts now. And there's no time to overthink. So yeah, I get a lot out of it because it just helps me to create faster. And I hear myself saying, don't overthink it. Maybe that's a big takeaway from this podcast for me. So thank you.
So is that your validation then? I mean, because you're a professional artist means that you have to commercialize it. You choose to commercialize it. And the commercialization actually validates your work as an artist.
Well, there is a commercial aspect of it, because otherwise I wouldn't have a job. And so there is that fact. However, I think over the years, what I've learned is the public, and they don't want to see me struggle necessarily. They want to visually see me on my substrate, whether it's watercolor paper or canvas or whatever. They want to see a type of enjoyment happening, and that's what can connect them to my work. I have to speak personally, because I know that there's artists who I don't mean to like cast a super wide net and define art, but I think the more personal that I've made, why do I make art? What gets me out of bed? What gets me into the studio? And for me, that's finding beauty in things. And over time, I care less about what I should do. And I'm working now with a really great gallery who I said, yeah, what do you think? I want to do some figure paintings. Or at one point I said, well, I just want to do I want to do some abstracted flowers. And they're like, yeah, that sounds great. And a lot of either friends or I've seen comments that, the gallery has expectations because maybe they take you on because you're this type of painter or that type of painter, and clients want this type of work or that type of work. And this gallery is really encouraging for just some experimental pieces that come out. And speaking of my influences, I don't mean to brush aside watercolor, because I think throughout my life and when I've made paintings, I'm kind of always going back to the spontaneity that watercolor has to offer, even in my oils, and the serendipity and appreciating that we never know where the journey is going to go. There's like this feeling of being along for the ride. And I don't like the term happy accident for that. That's what everybody loves to say about watercolor, because you get to decide as the artist. I mean, I'm not just sitting back there letting the painting create itself for the most part, because there was an action. I showed up, I got out my paints, I chose those materials, and I can watch and observe as to what's happening. And therefore I get to choose, do I destroy that? Do I keep it? Do I say this is my best work ever and put that watercolor in a frame? Do I rip that painting in half and say only this right side is good? And guess what? I'm going to use that for an oil painting. So there's creative ways to use those moments of serendipity that happen. And watercolor has really fostered that for me. And I think that kind of early training with watercolor, because I was doing watercolor I've always been doing watercolor. I think that was one of my first mediums I latched onto. I think that mentality has helped me to pivot quickly with plein-air, or just if the painting isn't working, sometimes I'll turn it upside down and start painting the canvas the other way. So it gives me that kind of like maverick mentality, I guess, that nothing is precious. And maybe it's a point of hope that there's always hope for the painting. And I guess I do like that with oil, that you can put 100 layers on there if you want to. That's okay. And I think that's what is good about my body of work, is that it's not these pieces failed and these are successful. It's like, it's getting back to playtime. I think playtime is important, to have fun with your materials and just mess about and not. I really try very hard with my work to avoid rigid or constricting things. I think that's why I was describing earlier that commissions and time management during an outdoor painting competition are helpful for me, because those constraints I can live with. But if I feel my artwork getting uptight, or the bounding box of that building angle has to be just right, I might push back mentally and just say, no, it doesn't. I'm going to just scrape that out and put purple here. And in fact, I'm getting rid of that building altogether. Or maybe I am going to flip my reference image to make it the opposite. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many times I've hybridized cities too. Like I'm doing a cityscape painting and all of a sudden it's Paris, but let's pull up an image of New York taxi cabs, because that's what we need right now. Let's just like mix it all up. and it's fun. It makes it fun.
Well, it has been quite a journey, as you say, started in watercolor, and now you also teach a lot as well. I do, as you know, like to go back to the beginning, Christine, where let's rewind this clock.
Let's do that.
Because you were born in San Francisco in 1967 to a father who was Charles, who was in the U.S. government, and your mother Martha was a stay-at-home, but she was also a doll maker, you told me, which I found fascinating, and that's something that runs in the family. Do you do that as well in your spare time?
I haven't done much three-dimensional things, but the exception to that would be I used to do quilting and sewing, and I remember going into something about that world was very inspirational to me, that my mom was a creative and she collaborated with my grandmother for a number of years to create these higher end, basically sculptural dolls. Sometimes they were made of wood. Sometimes it was sculpey. Other times it was cloth, and they would dress the dolls. It was an art form, and it's a beautiful art form to have fidelity to the time period, or maybe do like a fantasy creation. Sometimes they did it. They used to work collaboratively, and a couple of times they would work from a painting. And I remember going into my grandmother's studio where she had, on the one hand, it was messy, but it felt so welcoming with all the fabrics and the trimmings everywhere. She had all these boxes of stuff. It was really fun to go in there and just be immersed in all of her supplies. That was great.
Well, San Francisco in the 60s was very hip. It was all about flower power. Did any of that rub off? I mean, give us an example of the atmosphere that you grew up in and what that was like.
Well, my atmosphere growing up was, it's been about 2 to 3 years, where are we going to move to next? Because when my dad worked for the U.S. government, but if he got promoted or made a lateral, usually we hoped it was a move up, but if he made a move at all, it usually involved a move physically to a different locale. And I don't have any recollection of growing up in San Francisco, because I left when I was about 1.5, I think. And I've been back subsequently because we had family there. So San Francisco is a wonderful city, but I don't remember growing up there per se. My recollection of growing up was kind of, oh, it's time to move. Well, we're moving again. Oh my gosh, we're moving again. I went to 4 different high schools, for example, and I graduated American High School of Paris. So that's a happy ending to that story. But I just remember I'm like, wait, this is weird. I literally went to 4 different high schools, and that to me encapsulates what happens when I was growing up, because it's elementary school, middle school, and then something about the high school years. I remember going to that first high school. I was so shy. I barely talked to anybody. I had slumped shoulders because I was so tall. I was 6 feet tall very early on, big growth spurt, tallest person, like as far as the eye could see. And then the different high schools that I went to, by the time I got to the American High School in Paris, I had better self-esteem because I got to reinvent myself at each of those high schools. And there was a point in time, a large point in time, when I was bullied in school for having my 6-foot physique, and I actually had a thyroid disorder, so I was very thin because my thyroid was overactive. We didn't know that at the time, but I could just basically eat anything I wanted, and I was very skinny. And so I was teased a lot, and being able to go and move allowed myself to kind of reinvent myself. And if I hadn't gotten over that, I wouldn't be doing the teaching I am today. And I wouldn't be able to do something like, I mean, I guess we all feel like, oh, woe is me. I had it so bad. I went to Paris when I was a teenager. So no, I didn't have it bad at all. I definitely overcame those odds. And I feel lucky that maybe it wasn't all smooth sailing, because I know what it's like to be on the outskirts of things, or I was definitely never part of the popular crowd. And I heard something. I was at, I guess it was a plein-air convention or something. I can't remember if it was that or like an art retreat type of thing, but I think I overheard some people talking about the fact that it's like a clique, or the popular people or the instructors were sticking to the instructors. And I thought, wow, not a lot has changed. I mean, the feeling of pecking order or people, like one side, the students and the attendees were looking at the faculty, but we all started somewhere. I mean, the first time I attended some of those events, I knew absolutely nobody. And a large art gathering can be really intimidating, because you see like this person who's super famous and like, oh my gosh, if they would only like look in my direction and if they would talk to me. And you have these ideas that like attending their demo is going to give you the answer to everything. And I remember that feeling of, those early events I went to, like just wishing for that. Like, what would it be like to do that, to be on stage, to give a demo? Like, gosh, could I do that? And, then their painting turns out and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so talented and it's such a short amount of time. So it's interesting thinking about the early, you had me in the past and you see how quickly I went to the future and here and now. But I guess the past is important, because yes, having creatives in my family, yes, moving around a lot, yes, being able to reinvent myself, and yes, knowing that I didn't always have to be embarrassed about something like how tall I was, or the fact that I paint this way, and just feeling more comfortable in my own skin was important.
Were your parents tall? You have a sister, Rebecca, too. And any of the rest of the family as tall?
We're all pretty tall. My grandmother actually was 6 foot tall. So at the time, that was like freak range of being tall. No woman was that tall, but she was very beautiful, had amazing bone structure. And I remember her, she's since passed away, but I remember her never hiding that. She would wear beautiful jewelry, and, I admired this cashmere sweater, and she's like, I love this too. I bought two. I always want to live in cashmere. Like, she would always say things that were very like proud of her body and knowing how to dress the role. And yes, my mom is tall as well, but, I think I'm the only female in the family that's 6 foot. My sister and my mom are a little shorter. My dad's like 6'2".
What was your relationship growing up like with your parents? What were your takeaways from your childhood, do you think now, Christine, when you look back?
Oh, they were so great. We would always go to museums, and they were very supportive of my creativity. They kind of, I was going to say they didn't know what to do with it, but that's not true. They had a positive mindset about it. So that's a plus, number one. I feel very fortunate about that. If I said, hey, I'm going to be an artist, they would have, they were telling me you should be an artist, but I resisted for a while because I went through, they gave me all the tools for success and showed me museums, showed me the world. I've been we lived in Chicago. They would take me to the art museums in Chicago. Obviously, in Paris, we were going to many art museums. We lived in Washington, D.C. for a while. We went to museums there. So everywhere we went, we were going to museums, and they did give me art lessons, but it was a weird time. Early on, I would draw things, and either people in my class would say, "Oh gosh, that's really," classmates, they'd be like, "Wow, that's like really good." And I'd think to myself, no, it isn't. Like let's say I was like drawing a classmate or something, I know the foot was the wrong angle. So I got like really frustrated with the fact that people were giving me praise for drawings or images that I knew were flawed or just didn't look right. And you asked about my parents, and I'll give you an anecdote about my mom that I think is just really great, because I was, I guess what I was saying before is it was hard for them to find like the proper schooling for me. They thought that was the avenue to go. But in hindsight now, I realize it was good to have some tough knocks along the way and not have it too easy, like come up against your art. I described feeling dissatisfied with my work. Like it was important for me to realize that I could hit that brick wall and pick myself up and move forward. And going back to the anecdote about my mom, I was in this class where the art program, I think it was like fifth grade, something like that. So I would come home with these art projects, and my mom's like, "But these are craft projects." It was things like we were working with clay, and we did like a crumpled, like we scrunched up a piece of paper and made it look old, and we did a treasure map. And I could see my mom getting antsy, like, "But that's not real art." She didn't want to put words in my mouth, but she knew I had this aptitude, and she was really hungry for ways for me to get better and kind of spread my wings and find out more about what type of art I wanted to do. And there was a scholastic art competition, which the teacher gets to select different pieces for including in the scholastic program. And bear in mind at this time, like in the social pecking order of the world, I was pretty low on the totem pole. Like my only point of interaction with classmates was when I was like doing a good drawing. Otherwise, I was just flying under the radar, and I just couldn't keep up with the social pecking order of grade school. It was an interesting time. But so my mom said, "Well, you need to be in the scholastic program." And I'm like, "Mom, you got to let that go. Like, first of all, don't draw attention to me." Oh my gosh, big eye roll. And she's like, "Your teacher needs to know that you're really talented." And I'm like, "Mom, you have got to," like, I was getting really uncomfortable. Like, "No, don't draw attention to myself. Like, stop." And she's like, "And how are you going to win a prize with like, clay or maps? Like, these are just craft projects that," and she's like, "You need to be doing like drawings or such. Your art teacher needs to see some of your drawings." And so she went in to talk to the teacher, who was a nice enough person. And, she's in elementary school, like, or middle school, teaching these kids. She's trying to just do her job, I'm sure. And she's like, "No, I've already selected the scholastic finalists, and we've selected all these different things." And my mom's like, "Well, my daughter is very talented, and you need to include her drawings." And the teacher was like, "Oh, fine, just have her go home and do something, and I'll put it in the next day. We can submit the next day." So I was really upset, and I drew my cat because I thought, whatever. And I guess where the story is going. I did get in the Scholastic program. I won the Gold Key Award, and it was a note to self to, again, don't overthink it, because the cat drawing had it was charcoal, and I had smudgy and erased pieces. And I was kind of a little bit angry at my mom for going out on a limb, but my mom went out on a limb for me, and I got an award, and it felt good. And the teacher was like, how about that? And that felt good. So it just taught me, I guess you don't know where your path forward will be. And there was all that adversity, and my mom could have let it go, or the teacher could have said, hard no, lady, back off, hover parent, go away. But yeah, little things like that made a difference.
Well, with that would come confidence, of course, but also you found some confidence and took advantage of your height by becoming a fashion model. How did that come about?
Yes, that's something I haven't really talked about before, but it feels like it's time to talk about that. It's a way of understanding what beauty is. I think about that now. It came about because I was a teenager in Paris, and I was walking the streets, and I was discovered. It's like, you need to be in a fashion show. Ew, no, that's weird. Who are you? What? No, you really need to be in a fashion show. And yeah, it was just like that. So that's another lesson I learned in my life, that was I prepared for that? No. Was it a really amazing experience? Yes, it was so amazing.
Yeah. What was the moment then?
It was the 80s, and I just remembered this gradual realization that people were going to pay me for this physique that previously I had been made fun of before. And not only that, I was going to get paid really well. And it opened all types of doors for traveling. And I was able to stay in Europe for 2 years after I graduated high school. And I traveled, I lived in Spain, I lived in Germany. I got flown to the Grecian islands for a fashion shoot, and you could go to any party you wanted. And it was like going from the bottom of society to the top. It was so bizarre. And to realize how quickly things it was like a funhouse mirror, wait, no, I'm not popular. Nobody likes me. Oh, you're going to pay me just to sit here and wear a simple dress, and all I have to do is sit here. Somebody does my makeup, and okay, sure. It's just so interesting.
So what was that at your first moment when you said you were discovered? Talk us through that moment.
Well, I did go to the American High School Paris, as I mentioned, which it was not just Americans that were going there. It was more like an international school. English was the primary language, but there were people who were going there that were kind of hooked in with the fashion world. Somebody knew somebody who owned a boutique. So that's kind of how it started. I was approached on the street in Paris, but I didn't really follow through with that. But a friend of mine said, we're doing a fashion show, and it's so-and-so owns a boutique, and my mom is running this, and we're getting girls in the American High School Paris, and it's going to be for a charity, and it's going to be a fundraiser, and you're going to be in the show. And I'm like, I am absolutely not going to be in the show. There's no way. And she's like, come on, we have your sister doing it. And, there were a couple of other people. And I thought, oh, this is a friend, and she wants to include me. And I could be part of this and maybe it wouldn't be that bad. And okay. So I begrudgingly said, okay. And then the little boutique that, it was my friend Anne. So her mom like knew of other little Parisian boutique owners that were hoping to have their designs seen by, the parents at the American high school, that I went to. They hired me to do like their fashion show. So all of a sudden it's like you blink your eyes and then it happened. And so then I was doing fashion shows in Paris. It was just like that. I mean, I would describe it even further, but literally it was like whiplash. 1 minute you're not, and the other minute, there you are. It was so bizarre.
Not something that you were dreaming about. Oh, one day I want to go to Paris and become a fashion model.
No, absolutely not.
And you were there with your sister.
Yeah.
Were you there? You went through school together with your sister there.
I did. Yes. Yeah.
And that, I would imagine, would have boosted your confidence no end, right? I mean, you probably completely disregarded the fact that you were 6 foot tall from there on in. It became an asset. And I would imagine helped you visually too, in artistic terms.
It did all of that. But at the time, it was strange. It was very strange. It's, yes. I mean, it did help me with all of that, but I mean, I guess I'm still, I'm very appreciative of that world because, it is not something I ever aspired to do. In fact, it was the furthest thing ever that I thought that I would do. I think I was probably a difficult child, and I was difficult to be friends with. I was very introverted, and this kind of like super forced me into, now you're interfacing with people. Now people are going to say things to you like, that looks wrong. Let's put you in the black dress because the tan one doesn't look good on you. And like, you have to be okay with that. And it's the same thing now. Like if a client says, I'm sorry, that doesn't match my sofa, so I'm going to buy this painting instead. Like, so what? Like the world didn't end because that statement was made, you know? And then you just care a little. It trained me to care a little bit less about objective statements that were going to be said about something. I mean, my job was to be a clothes hanger or promote a campaign, and it's a visual language or kind of the flavor of the company. And to be able to tap into that for art, you know, here's a community. Well, what's the flavor in this community? Oh, they love to spend time at the beach. Let me see if how can I take that raw material and do something with it? And it's very interesting. It was a boost in self-confidence, but not perhaps in the way that you think of, well, somebody reached down, plucked me up and said, now we're going to do this with you. And, you know, you're going to make money as a fashion model. It was self-confidence because it was, I was proud of myself for trying to navigate that world, you know, travel by yourself, stand up for the fact that you actually worked 5 hours instead of 4 hours, work with an agency to negotiate the percentage of your pay. You know, I was becoming a business person, I guess.
And why did it come to an end?
Oh, I got old. Come on. No, I realized that, you know, it's good while it lasted, but it was cool that I did something I never thought that I would do in a million bazillion years. And then it was cool because I was able to do so much and see so much. And then I thought, well, where do I want to be 5 to 10 years from now? I don't want to be like old models scrapping to get jobs. So let's go back to school. Like all of a sudden I wanted to go back to school, and I chose a school that would have art. Yes, definitely no math requirement. Thank you very much.
And what age were you when you did that?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. My ages were all messed up because I was actually one of these people that went to school early. I went to school like when I was 3 or 4. I was in kindergarten. Unlike the kids these days that are like held back, or you do preschool. I'm like, Mom, everybody's going to school. I want to go to school. And she's like, okay. So I kind of because I was a year ahead, I figured I could take a year off, no problem. And then I was having so much fun after high school taking my year off that I was like, yeah, I want to do another one. So I took 2 years off. And I guess I was like 19 when I went back to college. I guess that's it. I didn't want to be starting college like as an older student. So yeah, I was a year older than all the incoming freshmen.
And you knew the direction you wanted to go in then now. So what subjects did you choose?
Yes, I was I was ready. I was like, I want to study. I want to use my brain. That felt good after being, kind of, I would never talk down about the fashion world. But I wasn't doing any writing. I wasn't doing much in the way of art. And I didn't want to pursue anything in fashion. And so that's why I was like, okay, I need to go back. I need to study. I just want to be clear about that. I wasn't like, I need to go back and use my brain because it was rotting away. But because the fashion, if I had pursued fashion, it probably would have been something different, like seeing if I could have gotten other types of jobs in the fashion world. But I really decided I wanted to go back to doing some art, but I wanted to do learning. I was curious about things. So I specifically chose I knew I didn't want to go to New York. I had been to New York often enough that I thought that would be too hectic for me. And so art school in New York was a no. And then I was like, well, where else could I go? So I ended up going to Washington University in St. Louis, which is a very wonderful school. And they had an academic program that I was really proud to be a part of. But moreover, they had an amazing art program. And I ended up getting a BFA in illustration with a minor in geology. And I loved geology. And so I'm really happy I have that minor in geology. I considered, maybe doing something with the geology aspect of my degree at a certain point. I worked for the Earth and Planetary Sciences at the Washington University. Had a great professor that saw my sketches on my exams of diagrams of like the Earth's crust and all of this. And he said, I would like for you to work in my department. We need some people who can draw to do schematics. And so I worked for, he was involved with it was the Earth and Planetary Sciences, as I mentioned, and he was really great. I worked on like the Mars rover mission, and I did schematics for all types of projects. It was so fun.
So was there a lot of dating going on as well whilst you were in Paris and living the life of high fashion, Christine? Because it's quite a contrast to come from there to St. Louis.
I know it is.
Socially, how was the adjustment?
I thought this is going to be good for me because I've lived life to the nines. I've, been to probably every nightclub in Paris and now I'm going to go study and I'm just going to do that. So I didn't, there was dating going on in Paris. I had French boyfriends and, what ended up is I wished I had learned French a little more fully, but I got to the point where I could speak French pretty well. And most of the young people were interested in speaking English. So I would speak English and they would speak French, and we understood each other perfectly, and it was great. So that's one of my takeaways from my hanging out in France moment. And then when I came to St. Louis, I mean, I just got all nerdy again, and I just wanted to go and study, but there was a thriving scene of, it's just the fraternity and sorority scene was the big deal. And I didn't feel like I was going to be part of that. So I thought, well, that's okay. I'll just do my studies then. But I ended up finding some nice people in St. Louis. It was weird to go like back in time, because for a lot of these people that were at school, this was their first time away from home. And I didn't want to be like, oh, well, I don't have anything in common with you because like I've lived all over the world. But so I just kept my mouth shut and tried to focus on my studies.
What did you do for fun though?
I ended up finding some nice people in the art department that were, they would go on like just day trips, or it was just a lot of hanging out and casual time, and a lot of studio time spent in St. Louis as well. In fact, my husband and I just went back to St. Louis. A friend of ours was being honored for some of the work that she had been doing, and it was really fun to go back there. St. Louis is a great city. But yeah, I ended up meeting some really great people in college, so it was a lot of fun.
So take us from college then to that job that you just described there in graphic design, and you were creating murals as well, I understand. So where did you get to the point now with you were becoming a full-time artist?
Yeah, I think that's part of my life story, is that I kept finding ways to say I'm not a full-time artist. I got a degree in illustration because I didn't want to get it in fine art. It's just like this mental block that, oh, you can't really make a living as an artist. And then I worked in design. I was really excited when I found out that a geology, that seems so tangible. A geology department would want an artist, and I could do renderings for them. That was exciting. And then I worked as a muralist. I mean, this was after I graduated. I'm trying to think if I might have worked somewhere in graphic design, but then I saw this magical ad that it was only a few lines that said, muralist wanted, no experience necessary, watercolor experience a plus. And I was like, wait, this is so me. Like, this is me all over, forward, backwards, sideways. Like, I am all in on this job. They better hire me. And they did. So I worked. The reason they said watercolor experience was needed was because they did a lot of progressive, puddly, all the murals were created flat and then on muslin stapled to a plywood floor in this huge warehouse with like 10-gallon. My arms got really strong. Like, we held around 10-gallon buckets. We were working with mops, and we would have paintbrushes that were like taped to these bamboo poles. And to get perspective on your work, we would be up on like 10, 20-foot step ladders, or there'd be scaffolding to look at your work. It was a really cool place to work. And we did ballet backdrops for theater productions. We did staging for, let's say, a museum is going to hold a gala to promote their patrons. We would do the whole extravaganza of the centerpiece and all of the decorations, even maybe some swag bags and draperies, decorating the chandeliers. So it was an events firm. The job itself was great. The creativity and the people that I worked with. Unfortunately, the person who owned the company was fairly erratic. I'm sure she had her own issues, but I just remember it was like, Thanksgiving is Thursday and it was like Wednesday at night. And she, everybody's like, oh, have a great Thanksgiving. And she's like, don't bother coming back. You're all fired. And we were like, what? Wait, what? We're out of a job? Yeah, I'm sure it was money or like whatever. But so, yeah.
Where was this?
It was in Seattle. We were living in Seattle at the time, my husband and I.
When did you meet your husband then? Because from college, we're missing a step.
Oh, yeah. I met him in college.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it was like, I was a freshman and I was basically like, you're really cute, but I'm not ready to date anybody seriously. I'd kind of left somebody back in Paris and, I'm just like, I'm focusing on my studies. But he was pretty persistent. He really wanted to get to know me. So now we've been married so many years and we're very happy. It's great.
That's wonderful. Aren't you glad he persisted then?
I know. Thank goodness. He knew what needed to be done for sure.
And you took off, you went to Seattle, and then what brought you back to where you are now in Northern Virginia?
It was some of his schooling. He furthered his education and he had like postdoc that had us be here and there. And we worked on his career at that point because we were starting to think of having a family maybe. And he just needed to finish his schooling and get his PhD, which he did. And so, yeah, we ended up in the DC area. And I feel really lucky that there's such a thriving arts community here. And that was pretty lucky that all worked out for me, because if I had been, I guess art, there's a lot of people working in more remote areas, but at the time we landed here, it just felt good to have like a supportive arts community. We did spend some time in Boston. I met some artists in Boston. That's where my oldest daughter was born, when I was there in Boston. So East Coast has been great for meeting artists, and yeah, I miss Seattle though. That's where I got really involved with some rainy street scenes. That was my first series that I did out there, rainy street scenes in watercolor.
Yeah, plenty of rain in Seattle for sure.
Yes, exactly.
You went on to two daughters now. Did they have any artistic inspiration from their mother?
Well, my daughters are very artistic, and one had a thriving career on TikTok, was selling prints of her. She told me, Mom, it's content creator. That's what you say these days. I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's cat calligraphy, or actually she switched it to Catherine calligraphy. And yeah, she went viral there for a while, had a lot of success on TikTok. And now she is trying something different. She still keeps up that account, but she's not doing that full time anymore. So she's working for a firm. She's doing something with words. So she's working on writing for a company. And she's living in Richmond. And my other daughter has she's a wonderful drawer. Both kids have come with me and seen me teach workshops like overseas, and the kids can draw and paint with the best of them. So my oldest daughter, she did some really amazing, I guess they were monotypes. But I've kept a couple of them up in the studio because they're very inspiring as far as very controlled value, grouping of shapes, a lot of abstraction and texture. And when I talked to her about it, it reminded me of my reaction early on, which was, well, this is not that big a deal. Like, it's not that good. And I was careful not to gush too much about how excited I was about these prints, but I wanted to tell her, like, this is really cool. So I'm proud of her for kind of finding her own way. She's done more with pencil, and she's done some things with monotypes, and I don't know, we'll see where her creativity leads her. But I do remember both my kids came to take your daughter to work day, and they were, I don't know, 13, 14, 15, something like that. And we went to Great Falls, a big local park here. And I did the silly thing with, oh, look at the sky, look at the water, look at the rocks. And, I tried to do everything, and the painting didn't turn out. And the kids did awesome work. First of all, they were probably euphoric because they got to skip school, right? And so one of my kids sat in a big pothole, which is kind of like this, the geology nerd in me was excited that she was sitting in the pothole. So a pothole is a scooped out area of rock where it's very rounded because the water has carved it out in a circular motion. So along the Potomac was this exposure of rock with a big kind of rounded hole in it. And I remember she sat in the hole and made a painting with her eyes just looking out over the rim of the pothole at the water. So I'm like, cool viewpoint. Oh my God, this is so great. And the water was just this little splash mark. And then my other daughter had done this thing where she focused on the aggression of the Potomac is a really, you can't go swimming in it. It'll carry you away. It's sometimes it has like class 5 rapids, which is like the highest class rapids for kayakers. You see them practicing, but this is like Olympic level, And so she is all this billowing, crashing water. And I framed both of the kids' watercolors, even though I tossed mine out, because I thought on this day, in every joyous possible manner, I was out painted by my own kids. I love it. This is so great.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yep.
A very, very proud mother.
Yeah, they did such beautiful work. I was thrilled.
And being in Northern Virginia now, and I'm wondering where else you would go to paint plein air. Do you go to the coast? Do you go to Chesapeake?
It's a good question. Mostly I paint my yard. I love the trees in my backyard. I live in Reston, and there's a lot of nature here. Reston is getting hugely developed in the areas that are clustering around our new metro stops. But in the suburbs of Reston, you could still find a lot of nature. And so being part of a greater metropolitan area, the sad thing that has happened is I don't get out much to paint anymore. I feel like I don't want to fight traffic. It's another reason that I would decide to go to Paris and walk to my location to paint. So also another reason I really like doing the plein air events, because I choose places where inspiration is just right outside the door. And the thought of packing up all of my stuff and fighting rush hour traffic to go find inspiration to paint is not fun for me anymore. And therefore I paint either in my studio or kind of my backyard, or I would make a special effort to go to a place like Great Falls to meet up with friends. But usually I don't do as much plein air painting anymore. I actually stopped teaching my plein air classes that I taught. That kind of coincided with the pandemic. But I thought, yeah, it's time to stop that because I don't really enjoy doing any commuting whatsoever.
So what does 2024 look like for you then, Christine? Where can we see your work?
Yes, I'm going to be having a solo show at Principal Gallery in Charleston, and that is going to be opening. I believe they set the opening for April 5th, and that's going to be in conjunction with the Charleston Garden Tour that is going to be happening. And I think they're working on getting me an Artist in the Garden event. That hasn't been totally set yet. but I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be my main focus this winter. During the winter also, of course, I'll be creating work for that show, garden work, Paris work. I hope to have my figure work done. I was creating some figure work. I did some figure work just for fun because that's the human figure is so beautiful, and it's something I haven't painted in a while. And that was kind of my first way of starting painting in my studio, was hiring a model, and I invited a few friends over and we painted the model, and it was loads of fun. But 24 for me is a couple of plein-air events have popped up. I do believe I'm doing plein-air Telluride in June. A couple of other events I'm waiting to hear back from. And I have that solo show in the spring, as I mentioned. And then the other item that is set is I will be going back to Cape Ann, and I just said yes to Door County. So those things are going to be a little bit later in the summer. And I believe Cape Ann is in October. Yep. So that's 24 as of now. Oh, yes. And I have a trip to Spain planned. I like to try. I said I don't like to commute, but apparently hopping across the pond is no big deal.
Europe is the exception. Well, it sounds like a fun and busy year, Christine. So I'm glad you took the time to come on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Gosh, my pleasure. You asked such good questions. Thanks for letting me ramble on a bit. You're very accommodating to my stories.
And if you scroll down the show notes, you'll find more information about Christine, her website, and her Instagram. And you can also find us on Instagram, of course, at The Art Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. So do give us all a follow. And you'll also find us on Facebook. We have a page there too. Our email address is hollowellstudios@gmail.com. If you'd like to drop us a line, we always love to hear from you, and especially if you have any suggestions for guests. Tell us why you think they should be on the show. And a reminder that these episodes drop every Tuesday now at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. So if you subscribe on your podcast app, it will automatically refresh so you get the very latest episode when it drops. I'll be back next week when my guest will be the cinematographer Chris Wareggi. So I do hope you'll join me then.